Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. People will be joining. I'm sure we're up to about 39 now. Um, so my name's Joy Goldman, and normally you find me in Setúbal, although today I happen to be in Boca Raton, Florida. It's a little warmer than I think what Setúbal's experiencing these days. Uh, Regardless, it's nice to be part of this community always. Um, so I want to acknowledge some folks who are on the call. And before I do that, please mute yourself if you're not speaking, which for most of the webinar, you won't be. We are recording it and we will be making that available to you. So the people who have been most intimate in helping bring this to life are our primary presenter, Diane Bassett, who, Diane, you can wave if you want. There you go. And supporting her always is her husband and partner in life, Dennis Murray. Yeah. So Dennis, you can show yourself if you haven't. It's always those behind the scenes people that actually make us successful. There he is, literally behind. And Joyce Becker, who is relatively new to our Setúbal community. Joyce, what, 4 weeks or so, give or take?
37 days.
Well, yeah, and who's counting? And we just wanted to make sure technology-wise that we would be okay. And so Joyce has offered to back us up in this. And this is being sponsored. It came to life actually in the work we've been doing for what we call the Setúbal Community for Aging and Dying Well. And if you've heard about us, I'd just love you to put in the chat a quick yes, just for us to gauge how word it is or is not spreading. And the mission of the Setúbal Community for Aging and Dying Well is to support those living in Setúbal in aging and dying well with dignity and peace of mind. We provide compassionate support, unwavering advocacy, and meaningful engagement to foster a strong community that honors each individual's health journey. And as we've planned to support our community around aging and dying well, some of our initial efforts have included how to complete a Portuguese advanced directive. And I know Torsten, who's on the call, has taken that to Cascais, and they've already done something regarding that. And there was interest also in Porto and the Silver Coast. And as we had those discussions, people were very concerned and interested, in part due to some real life events around, well, what happens if something happens to me in an emergency and I am alone and can't speak for myself? And as a result, Diane, in her wisdom and superb organizational skills, came forward with, well, we could create QR codes so that they could be scanned, and we could do that on a variety of levels. And Diane's passion in addition, and these are things we don't think about until we have to very often, is what happens to our pets and our animals should something happen to us. Who has keys? Who knows how to take care of them? Who's ready to take action when what would like not to happen happens? So all of that went into our planning for this. And I don't think I'm going to take more time. Did I miss anything, Diane?
I don't think so. That's great. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I am going to spotlight her video so that you see her predominantly and the slides. And again, mute yourself and we will take questions. There will be time at the end. So thanks. Yeah, we're set.
Great. Hi, everybody. So once again, my name is Diane Bassett, and as Joyce said, this kind of came about through a series of a combination of experience and some tough lessons learned, and a broader team who's been thinking about these issues. And after putting some thought into it, we came up with what we think makes a lot of sense in terms of a good plan that I just want to present to you. And this is still a work in progress, but the structure of this is ready to rock and roll if this is something you like. And it's free and easy to put together. So that's what we want to talk about. And why are we doing this? As Joyce mentioned, we've had some experience with one situation where someone was severely incapacitated and needed a high level of support for more than 8 months. So sometimes when something bad happens and we end up in the hospital, we're not going to be coming home for a long time. And if you don't have a plan, it makes it much harder for other people to help you. So we're trying to make it easier for those people to help you in the event of that kind of an unthinkable emergency, and make it easy for them to literally jump in and have the tools and the information that they need. And she did mention the immediate welfare of your pets. I personally had someone contact me in total distress. He had been in the hospital for 3 days, and he called me and said, I have 5 pets in my apartment who haven't had food or water for days. And it was horrifying. And we did get that situation resolved, but it was not easy. And his animals, obviously, their lives were in danger. So that's the kind of thing that we really need to think ahead as well. So we have an agenda. We're going to show you how to organize your information for various types of audiences or helpers, and talk a little bit about what should be provided to each of those groups of people, few special considerations. And as you think of questions, if you could please put them in the chat area, we will cover questions at the end. And for accessing this content later, as you know, this is being recorded, and we're going to provide the link everywhere where this was promoted as a comment. So in the same post in Americans and Friends PT Facebook group, and in the same post in the our Setúbal community, and same post in the Setúbal community for aging and dying well, we'll make sure that it's widely available, and we'll make sure that we include the phrase emergency plan webinar, so you will be able to find the recording that way. And then we're going to be providing some really good resources as we go along. And my husband Dennis is going to load those for you into the chat box so you can download them now. In the future, those will also be available at the Setúbal Community for Aging and Dying Well in their Facebook group. And there's also a website in the works for the future. And once we get that up and running as well, it will also be available there. So those of you who were able to show up tonight, you'll get those first, and look for those in the chat area as Dennis loads them. Okay. So let's think this through a little bit. The scenario that we're trying to accommodate is, heaven forbid, you are hit by a car, you are seriously injured, you are unconscious, and nobody knows who you are, and an ambulance arrives. Now what happens? So the first question is, how will they know who you are and your vital medical information, et cetera, and who to call? And we want to avoid being taken in as a Jane or John Doe. That would be terrible. So one of the things we're going to talk about here is how to create sort of a cascading domino effect where your first responders have easy access to know your vital info, and then they're also alerting your next team, and then it just dominoes from there, and people get activated, and it's a miracle. Everybody jumps into action, and they all have what they need to hold up your life for as long as necessary. It's an ambitious goal. So a better scenario would be what we're going to be presenting here. When we think about it, there are really 3 key groups of people who are going to be involved. The first, as we mentioned a moment ago, are your first responders. And you can imagine the basic stuff that they're going to need about you. So there's an emergency information area in your phone. And you should definitely populate that. We were told by a woman who used to work as in Portugal as an EMT that they do look for the phone and they do try to go in and find the emergency information for this. Um, and we had gotten conflicting information about whether they would even do that, but she reassured us that they do try to do that. So by all means, fill that in and fill it in well. But your phone might get kicked away. If you get hit by a car, your phone might have gotten kicked away or damaged, and that might not be possible. So we've given some thought to another way to do this, and that would be to populate a folder and give them access to it with a QR code. And that QR code is on your person and is sort of screaming, scan me, scan me. And we've gotten questions about, well, do you think someone would scan it? We've taken steps to make it very clear. This is my emergency information scan here. So we'll talk about that. So the next group is your next team of emergency contacts, and they're going to need a huge amount of information. Um, and we're going to go into some detail about that. But that information is going to be housed in a separate place with a separate shared, it's a Google folder with a separate shared URL for them. And that URL is also tied with a QR code for their convenience. And we'll talk later about what should maybe be in that folder. And then the third group, as we mentioned briefly, would be for your friends who have sworn in advance. And Lana, you're out there, thank you. Um, um, who have promised that when they get word that something has happened to you, they swoop in and take care of your pets immediately. So it's a good thing to have a group of people willing to do this because Lana might be planning a trip to Thailand or something. So we don't want to put all of that, it might be 8 months, right? So we want a team of people who can coordinate. But they're going to have a different set of information specifically focused about your pets and a different door into that through a URL and a QR code. So we'll talk about that next. Okay, so as we mentioned, I'm just going to illustrate for those of us who are super visual like I am. So we start with your first responders, and this is going to be your level one Google folder, and you've got your phone over here, which also has the information. So that's great. But if your phone is damaged, they can still get it here. Then we're going to have your second level. You're going to have 3 Google folders. So your level one, your level two is for your bigger team. And this contains the larger amount of information that they need to hold up your life while this is all happening. And it also tells them who do we need to make sure is notified to go get the pet. And then we have our pet people. And so we give access to these separately through different QR codes. And the URL is tied to the folder and is embedded in the QR code. The reason we want both, by the way, is when you think about it, I'll use Lana as an example. So Lana is on my pet team, and if I just give her a QR code, how is she going to keep this handy forever? Just conveniently accessible in case she gets the call. She might just want the URL because she can copy and paste the URL into the description area of her contact info for my contact on her phone. And that might be more convenient for her than having the QR code. So I recommend both. For the level one people, I think the QR code would be more convenient for them. Okay. So let's talk about QR codes. Not everybody has ever created a QR code before, and I'm going to tell you where to go to do it. We've done some digging to find out which service seems to be the easiest and friendliest. So I recommend Adobe Express. This is a QR code that if you scan that with your phone, will take you to Adobe Express and where you make your QR code there. So remember, first you're going to create those 3 folders, level 1, level 2, level 3. They don't have to be populated yet. They can be empty. And you go in here and you're going to copy the URL for that shared Google folder. If you don't know how to share a Google folder, you'll have to ask one of your friends to show you. So there's a special URL to give to other people or a link if they need access to that folder and you are giving them permission to have access to that folder. That is the URL that you're going to embed. And this website is going to give you a QR code that looks similar to this, but when someone scans it, it will take them to your Google folder. So this is where we recommend that you go to do that. It's free, it doesn't expire, and it's what we call static, and that's fine. What this basically means is that you've created a connection from this QR code to that Google folder, and you can take your time putting documents into that folder. That's fine. That's not going to invalidate your QR code. If you ever change to a different folder, then you have to generate a new QR code and tie them together. But you can take your time putting documents in that. You haven't ruined the connection between your QR code and your folder. That's what static means. Okay. I also recommend that you keep a convenient record of your QR codes. I literally copied and pasted them into a Word document. I made sure I labeled which one was level 1, level 2, level 3, so I can use them over and over in different ways and make sure that the people who I want to have them, and I'm giving them the right QR code. Does that make sense? And now we're going to give you a resource called Making Your QR Codes, and it just sort of walks you through. And it also shows you an example of how I took, let's pretend this QR code is my level 1 QR code for first responders. I took that, brought it into a Word doc, and then using the little editing function, I added some text to the top that said, emergency, scan here for my emergency info. So that way, if someone finds this on me, it's very clear what this is. And if you're an emergency responder, you're like, oh, here, let's scan this. Whereas maybe you wouldn't think to scan it if you didn't know this is my emergency info. And where might you keep that? You might put it on the back of your phone. You might put it inside your bike helmet. You might wear it on a dog tag under your clothes around your neck. You might wear a medical alert bracelet and have it as a sticker on the inside of that next to your skin. There are lots of places you might put it in your wallet. So there are lots of places you can put it to sort of say, scan me, in case there's an emergency. But we just wanted to show you the structure of how you can at least have it available. All right. Let's talk a little bit about what should go into each of the folders. We've mentioned a few times what first responders need to know. And as we mentioned, there are a few ways to do that. Obviously, populate your phone with this stuff. And then in addition, created a one-page document. I'm assuming they just need access to that folder with one page, but I have the ability to put more in that than I do in my phone. So I'm going to give you a sample of a dummied up version of that one-page document, but I do like having something in both Portuguese and English all on one page that they are meant to see if they are kind enough to scan my code. And a big part of that on that page is a request saying, please call through this list of people until you reach someone. And then the first person they reach knows to notify the rest of the team and activate everybody. So this is kind of an example, and we're going to provide a version of that in the, I think we have a copy of that. Okay, yes, we have a copy of this for you that we'll put in the chat area, just so you can kind of copy it. And this is all fake, but it includes my name, my residence card number, all of that stuff, mentioning that I do have a advanced directive, which they will know as soon as they know my Utente number. It says my allergies, who my husband is, his phone number, my address, and then a big alert. We have a dog and we have people lined up. Please start calling through these people until you reach somebody. And of course, give that contact info. Okay. Level 2 helpers need to know a lot of stuff. So It's a long and evolving list. I don't think we have the perfect list, but I think we have a really good starting point with a big thank you to Mary Romeo, Ann Kinghorn, and Joy Goldman, who put together this draft of a checklist. And we're providing that now to you in the chat area. So some of the things you want to think about as you gather these documents and put them in your level 2 folder is and this is one of the special considerations, give some thought to, is any of that so sensitive? And the answer is probably yes. Is any of that so sensitive that you only want one person, maybe a family member in the US or something, to have access to that? Like maybe your spreadsheet of all of your passwords and logins or something. Um, so anything that is not um, shareable with the whole level 2 team should be pulled out and maybe given its own folder. Because you should assume that if you're sharing that top level URL, they should have access to everything inside of that. Because if someone has access to the top level folder, they get access to everything in it. If I understand the current way that Google folders work, that is true. So I don't think it's really possible to have a team of people who have access to the whole folder, but you limit access to this one document in there to just that one person. I don't think you can do that. So let's assume you can't and think that through. And so as you start to populate this, keep your mind on that and see if you have, well, for example, I have a question of whether I would want to set up an ongoing financial power of attorney now with someone so they could act immediately in the event of an emergency. This was a huge problem for a family that went through a crisis and they did not have financial power of attorney for the patient and really struggled to support him the way he needed to be supported. So I thought, this might be something worth doing in advance. So just give some thought to security and access to your finances and that kind of thing. All right, this is an example of what that spreadsheet looks like. It's actually longer than this, and we are putting it in the chat if we haven't already. Okay, thank you, Dennis. Moving on, more things about level 2 helpers. A reminder that you don't need to wait until your folder is perfectly and fully populated to actually start to reach out to your level 2 people, recruit them, explain what you're doing, set up your QR codes and access to that folder. Remember that you can populate that over time, and it will all be waiting for them if needed. In my level 2 folder, I created a read this first document. Basically, like I wanted to reassure the team, thank you for coming here. Here's what you need to know. Making sure that someone is contacting my pet team. I'm suggesting that they all form a WhatsApp group and I make sure they all know who the whole team is with their contact. So that way they can coordinate and know who's on first, who's doing what, and they can kind of pass the baton. That kind of thing is very helpful. And then if there's a power of attorney, tell them who that is and tell them who has keys to the apartment, etc. So it's kind of a start here document. Give some thought to that. A family who went through a big long-term crisis struggled. It was an American family who took turns coming over and passing the baton to each other, and they were confronted with terms for Portuguese documents and offices and agencies that they didn't even know what this meant. So it made it really hard on them. And they worked as a team, much like we're describing here. They worked as a team and they created a cheat sheet that they shared with us. I consulted with them in putting this presentation together to make sure that we got their advice. And they are sharing with you their cheat sheet, which is a great thing to have in case I would put this in the level 2 folder. Your family in the US is going to need this or wherever you're from, your family will probably need this if they're not living in Portugal and they don't know what finances means, they don't know what utente means, etc. So they shared this with us and we're providing that to you in the chat session. So now we can think a little bit about what our pets will need and what our pet team needs. So the most important thing is who's got keys to the house? And that's an important thing to think through. Make sure multiple people have keys to your house. And I would not have them label your keys with your address. Do not do that. We are holding keys to our friend's place, and we have them here, and I have their dog's name in a piece of tape on the keys. So if I'm looking in my drawer, I'm like, oh shoot, which keys are theirs? It's the dog's name. I know their dog's name. So that's one way to do it. But make sure that multiple people have keys to your place. Obviously, give them everything that you would give a house sitter, the where the food is, the meal info. I like to provide a vocabulary list of cues that your pet knows so that you're actually speaking the dog's language or the cat's language. And you also want to provide an authorization in there from you to your vet saying that you have authorized anyone bearing this document to give them permission to treat your animal for anything that you deem necessary, and that you will be financially responsible for the bill, or you will pay them back or whatever, but that, you are taking responsibility for the bill. Please proceed. Please don't wait for me to come out of my coma to get my permission, that kind of thing. And then obviously make sure that everyone on the pet support team knows who the other members are so they can gather on a WhatsApp group and they can coordinate care for your pet. That is it in a nutshell. It is a structure. I'm providing some helpful links here in one place. This is the Adobe QR code URL. This is the long URL to get you to the Setúbal Community for Aging and Dying Well, which is a great resource. I also wanted to point to two resources that we have used in our community here in Setúbal. The mealtrain.com site, which is a US site. This allows you to support somebody by having sort of a sign up list where people can provide not just meals, even though it's called Meal Train, it does more than that. For something like $10, you can buy the next level up, and that allows you to list, somebody needs a ride, somebody needs to be picked up at the airport, somebody needs a grocery run, somebody needs their dog walked. So these were all real examples of various kinds of support that our community has given when rallying around someone who is ill. The other thing is caringbridge.org, which I believe is also a US organization, but works just as well over here. And we have used that as a way for the family or the key contacts who are supporting and organizing support for that person to broadcast out to that person's much broader audience updates about their condition, etc. So let's just review what we've covered here. We've talked about how to organize your information for each type of the helpers, what should be provided to each team, and special considerations through that structure or scaffolding. Our goal, again, is to create a domino effect so that once you are in an emergency, the first responders can kick off a domino effect, alerting your various teams, and everybody knows what to do. They know where to go. And hopefully that will provide a better outcome and less effort for everybody. So we are going to provide you with a copy of these slides in the resource chat area. And we now have time for